Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the invitation here. I'm very happy to be with you. Let me shortly introduce myself because before I start speaking, I'm Christonikos Zonafos. I've been in the software development industry for the past 20 years. I started off as a software developer, but I gradually transitioned into business analysis, and I have left my development days behind. Since then, I've been working on large-scale projects for the European Commission, collaborating with analysis, QA, and development teams. And lately, I started recording my experiences on the books that were mentioned. And so that's the sum of it, the sum of 20 years. Today, I'd like to talk to you about requirements elicitation as a practical skill that depends heavily on context, not just as an agnostic way of approaching things. Before we begin, let me briefly share why this topic matters to me personally. Early in my career, I believed that if requirements failed, it was because I hadn't used the right technique. So what did I do? I started learning more techniques. I started refining the templates I used, and I started preparing even more structured workshops. And yet, I still saw situations where the outcome was not aligned with reality. And over time, I realized something important. The issue was not that I was lacking techniques, but the fact that the techniques were not matching the context. That realization changed how I approach now elicitation and how I guess most professionals eventually do. And that's what I'd like to explore with you today. So today the focus is not on knowing more techniques. You know what you know. The focus is on choosing the right one for the situation you are in. And this perspective, as you understood, comes both from practice and from writing, because writing has a way of teaching yourself. I hope that you can relate based on your own experience, and be glad to discuss that moving on. So, requirements still fail, even in mature teams. And usually, it's not because we don't know how to elicit. Most of the time, the problem is that we apply the right techniques, but in the wrong situation. Or let's say we hold interviews when observation is needed. We organize workshops, but clarity is still missing. Or we strive to record everything in documents, but more conversation is what is required. And that's the gap we will explore today. I usually hear that elicitation is described as gathering requirements, which already frames it as something passive. In practice, elicitation is actually active and deliberate. It's not something that we gather. We don't go out in the field and gather strawberries. We are discovering what is actually true. We are clarifying what is assumed, and we confirm what will eventually be built. And if I'm not mistaken, this is very much aligned with how Babok frames elicitation as a flow from preparation to discovery, collaboration, and finally confirmation. One important realization is that requirements do not come from a single source. There's no single version of truth to be trusted, let's say. We have people that tell us what they believe happens. We have processes that show us what is supposed to happen. We have documents that show us what was intended when the system was designed. And we have actual systems and data that actually show us what happens. Good elicitation means triangulating between these sources and trying to find the common truth, not trusting just one. A very common pattern I see when using techniques is technique loyalty, because we like things, and when we like things, we tend to use them. Sometimes we tend to interview for everything, or we organize workshops for everything, or we just start documenting everything, no matter the stage we are at. But fortunately or unfortunately, technique preference is not the same as technique suitability. The techniques should follow the situation and not the other way around. It may sound repeating, but it's very, very important to stress this out. And in practice, most elicitation work falls into one of three broad contexts, or let's say the challenging part of the elicitation work falls under three broad contexts. It's either the case that the problem itself is unclear, or people are confident but inaccurate. As I say here, they are plainly wrong, or we have conflicting perspectives. Each of these may look like cases that we could handle on a similar way, but they require a very different elicitation approach. And those three contexts are what we will explore now. If at any point you want to stop me, ask anything as we go, feel free to do so. Otherwise, we will have a Q&A at the end, of course. So starting off with the first context. In the first context, clarity is low. You hear things like, we just know it doesn't work, or you see teams jumping very quickly to solutions. And in this situation, the biggest risk is narrowing too early. Because the goal here is not to define requirements yet, but to expand our understanding. I remember working on a project where we were asked to redesign production workflows to make them more automated, something quite common, in order to reduce delays and errors that were caused by manual input. When we stepped into the first session, the client's business users were extremely prepared. It is quite rare to see so prepared group of clients. They presented actually a clean linear workflow, and they even had created BPMN diagrams for us, almost like UML diagrams, to ensure we implemented exactly as they had requested. And on paper, when we examined them, they looked efficient, looked a good analysis made for us. But instead of starting redesigning the solution or discussing about redesigning, we decided to sit with each user, take our time, and observe the current workflow in practice. We just wanted to cross-check. And that's when things changed a little bit. We identified 3 manual checks that had quietly carried over into the proposed new workflow. No one had mentioned them, no one had questioned them. They were simply considered, this is how it has to be done. And those steps were just added. When we examined those checks more closely, though, we realized they were based on predefined rules. Each user had his own notion of doing those checks, but when we put them down, they actually were the same. So that meant that they were very easy to automate. So in the end, about 90% of the workflow calls became fully automated, leaving only about 5% to truly exceptional cases that needed some manual handling. And that shift happened not because we used a more advanced technique, we didn't do anything strange, but because we chose to observe before jumping into definition. And In case like this, this is where exploratory techniques work best. Having open interviews where you listen more than you guide, by having observation or shadowing sessions where you see the work as it actually happens. This is one of my favorites actually, because users start feeling free, and especially if you have a small chat where you make them feel that it's okay to use any tricks they know. This reveals a whole bunch of things. And finally, open framing questions like how might we do this or that, uh, because then in combination with observation, you reveal some paths that may be quite rare, so you won't see in the normal scenario that is displayed to you. The aim, in any case, is to surface any assumptions and delay premature decisions until the problem space is clearly, or at least better, understood. Yeah, I missed that. Going on. Any question? Anything to add at this point? No. I proceed with the second context, where everyone agrees, but actually everyone or almost everyone is wrong. This is one of the most deceptive situations, because you think that everything is going to be okay, but you see that there is alignment, you understand that there is confidence from the clients, the stakeholders, and the discussion moves very quickly. But when you look closer, the confidence is not backed by evidence. And this is the key here, the evidence, because confidence is not evidence. I remember working on a case where a team described their approval process as straightforward and well controlled. Everyone in the room agreed on how it worked, no disagreement at all. That was a very good sign. But again, instead of immediately documenting the process, me and my team decided to review the actual system logs and approval timestamps. Here, it didn't matter what the users would say to us in an interview, because they were confident. But reviewing the system logs, what we found was different. The formal process described 3 approval steps, and theoretically, this should be followed always. But in practice, almost about 40% of the cases were bypassing one of those steps. Some supervisor was not there, another was allowing his trusted colleagues to auto-approve. So there were informal shortcuts that had evolved over time. No one mentioned that, because it had become like an invisible process for them through repetition. They assumed that they were doing what they should be doing, while in practice they were just skipping. If we had documented what they had initially described, we would have formalized a process that didn't actually exist. But instead, the data allowed us to distinguish between the intended workflow and the real one. This is why in high confidence situations, techniques like walkthroughs, data review, and document versus practice comparison are critical. System walkthroughs help us see what actually happens. Data and metrics ground discussions in facts. And comparing documented processes to real practice reveals any gaps that exist. But you have always to remember that the goal is, of course, to replace certainty with evidence, but without attacking people's credibility. So if you don't argue directly with the client and the stakeholders, but instead use the data to back your arguments, this doesn't put anyone in a strange position, and you can just take the information you need, validate it, and move along. And speaking about attacking people, the next case is maybe the most let's say tough one, where everyone disagrees. So this is the opposite of false alignment, practically. Here you have cases with visible disagreement, different stakeholders describe different versions of the same process, and the discussion becomes tense. So this is usually chaotic. And I'm afraid it's quite often encountered. I remember one time I was facilitating a workshop where two departments were trying to define a shared onboarding process. Each department insisted that their version was correct. And each department had valid reasons for that. But within 20 minutes, the discussion had shifted from how the process works to who is responsible. And especially who is responsible when it fails. Mm-hmm. At points like this, the risk is always very high. Because if you try to jump into the problem and solve it immediately, you will likely have to take sides and most probably amplify the disagreement. So at that time and every time from then on, instead of debating, we changed the structure of the discussion. We started mapping the process visually, one step at a time, on a share screen. We didn't ask for opinions. We only asked for what actually was happening, for actions that could be observed. What happens first? Who touches it next? Where does the process wait? Who gets it next? And as the map grew, something interesting happened. The disagreement was still there. It was still in the room, but it moved from personal attacks to structural criticism. Mm-hmm. Because the conflict wasn't really about people. Everyone has its own role. It was about handoffs and unclear ownership. Once the actual thinking behind it became visible, the discussion became calmer. And that happened because we gave the disagreement a structure. So everyone was, let's say, united against that faulty structure that we were trying to fix. And that is why in high disagreement situations, facilitation and visual modeling become critical. Workshops, visual models, and structured playback sessions help move the discussion away from opinions and towards a shared understanding. And of course, during workshops like that, and generally during elicitation, the goal is not to decide immediately. We have to be a little bit patient. What we need to do is to make thinking visible and shift the debate from people to their work. We have to separate the argument from the people and their roles and move it to the actual problem. And across all those three contexts, what really matters is questioning, how we question. Because as I'm sure you have realized, good questions are open, good questions are neutral, and progressive. And importantly, the sequence matters more than clever wording, because it's not about us sounding smart or being smart. It's about guiding understanding step by step. This is all a matter of good preparation, not a matter of smarts. And the useful pattern for this is moving from open questions to validation. Open questions explore what happens next. It's a very exploratory question for proceeding. Probing questions deepen. So you ask for specifics, you ask for examples. Clarifying questions remove ambiguity. What do you mean with that? What do you mean this is urgent? What do you mean you need high performance? What do you need? It has to be user-friendly. So common things that we listen, and if we leave it untouched, it's going to be just chaotic afterwards. And lastly, validation questions confirmed our shared understanding. And speaking of validation, discovery without validation is just guessing. Validation tests our understanding, exposes any missing details, and builds a shared ownership. And this is why Babok treats confirmation as essential, and it's not just an afterthought. Many elicitation problems surface not because discovery was poor, but because at the end, validation never truly happened. And validation is often skipped because teams feel aligned and assume that they all understand the same thing. Or we have schedule pressure. We have to deliver, we have to proceed, deadlines are coming up, so we skip the last part. Or validation is confused with formal approval. Having received an approval of our work doesn't always mean that what we wrote is actually understood. Approval is not the same thing as validation. Let me jump again in another case that we had. We had documented a requirement for a reporting dashboard. The business had confirmed it. The document was approved. We were one step before getting paid for it. Everything looked fine. But before moving forward, we decided to conduct a short playback session with using just a simple mockup. During the playback, everything went smoothly. But one stakeholder said to us, he was sitting just like that and said, "Oh, I thought this metric would be filtered by default by region." And we were frozen because that small assumption was never mentioned in the documentation. So it was not something hard to fix, but it would eventually affect every single report that would be generated. It would be two more clicks for every user. Still, the document had been approved, but the understanding was not aligned. And that is what validation protects against. And the thing is that effective validation doesn't require heavy documentation. It can be something very, very short, like a short playback session, like just said, or a visual walkthrough. It can be a 1 hour session going through the whole application, depending on the size of the application you are preparing, a prototype review, or simply simply restating your understanding and asking, what did I miss? This last question, what did I miss, is often the most powerful validation technique we have. Even if it's not officially documented in a requirements document, being in a meeting, presenting what's your understanding and asking what did I miss allows you to record just in your minutes, your meeting minutes, what is left to be done. And remember that correcting assumptions early can and will save weeks or even months later, depending on the size of your project and the assumptions you had made. So, if you take just 3 things away from today, first, choose your techniques based on context, not based on your habits. Keep the techniques you already know and try to see where they fit. I hope what I described today will help you clarify this a little bit. Secondly, always triangulate before you trust. Don't trust just one source. Don't trust just the documentation. Don't trust just the users. Use everything you have available. And thirdly, validate early, validate visually, and validate together with your client and as many stakeholders as you can. Because good elicitation is deliberate, but it doesn't need to be exhaustive. I'd be very interested to hear how the situations show up in your own work and discuss about it. This way of thinking is explored further in what I have written, what I write also in Medium, and I'm always happy to continue the conversation either here or in any other platform, direct messages, whatever you prefer. Thank you for your time. It was an honor to be with you. I'm looking forward to your questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was great. That was great and very well put together. And I love the different contexts that you have in there. I can certainly relate to all of those, actually. And and I'm sure, judging from the reactions from the audience here, a lot of them can also relate with a lot of stress that can happen,
Yeah.
especially if you have everyone disagreeing and starting to fight in front of you.
Oh, it's a mess. It's a mess. And
Or
many
yeah,
times, let me just say that working with institutions under the commission, especially, many times there are politics that are not visible to you. So the fight has started from some other meeting. It just carries over in your workshop. So separating people from the actual problem at hand is very essential.
right. There could be an invisible problem, right?
Exactly. 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 And
The politics.
that's a reason why it's always good to have an overall picture of your client, of the dynamics of the teams, and working for years with the same client helps you build that. Facing a new client for the first time is always much tougher because of this,
Right.
but it's a
Right.
gained experience.
Right. Right. Agreed. Um, at the end of the day, the relationship with the people is more important, right?
Of course, of course. It's actually a people role, the one we
Right,
have.
right.
And to be fair, that's why I decided to switch from software development to business analysis, because I realized that I was finding more intriguing uh, identifying solutions that satisfy people than finally building them.
Do you still find yourself wearing the developer hat, writing
No,
code or logic? No.
no. I don't. But that experience, I was working as a developer for 6 years. I was working purely as a developer, and then for three more in a mixed developer analyst role. But the thing is that I still have the developer's mind when needed, so I can communicate better with development teams, and I can also understand what is feasible when moving to analyze situations. It has helped me a lot. It has helped me a lot.
Yeah, yeah, I see that. I mean, um I'm also more on the people side myself, and I could never code. So
That's
although I
why
tried early in my career, did not work out.
that's why I always recommend analysts to get some technical knowledge, not deep knowledge, but at least knowing how an SQL query works or what object-oriented programming means
Oh yeah,
uh, gives you some fundamental knowledge to navigate the
right.
space.
What does the different technologies do for your stakeholders, and what are the costs and benefits, at least to that level
Exactly,
should be.
exactly.
The other scenario that you brought up was very interesting. Everyone agrees. Everybody's wrong. Now, let me add another layer of complexity to that.
Mhm.
Everyone agrees, everyone is wrong, but you're already far down the path. You already deployed something to production based
Oh,
on everybody being wrong.
this is now damage control.
Yeah.
Uh, so, do you want me to examine it from the BA side of the or the contract side?
Oh boy. Let's start with the BA side.
Let's start with the BA side. So, the BA is focused on delivering a solution that satisfies the needs. So, what you do is you re-examine, you dive into what has happened, you identify what doesn't satisfy the process, and redesign. Unfortunately, depending on how much you have deviated from what should be done, you need to redesign. And that's what I said, that you would save weeks or months by eliciting properly. This is the hidden cost of missteps. Uh, on the contract side, it depends on the kind of the contract you have. I mean, uh, the standard process would be to have a change request and seriously fight with the client, and request to be compensated for the time because you were either misguided or whatever. Or if you're working on a fixed price, this is a cost that goes usually to you. You have to suffer with it because, to be frank, you could do better.
Yeah. 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 For sure there's depending on the nature of the collaboration, there must have been going into the contract a shared um opportunity and a shared risk.
Mhm, mhm. Exactly, exactly.
And we do have a question.
Perfect.
I hope I'm saying this right. Rosine Kamenang. Go ahead and correct me if I'm saying that wrong. Is that
Correct.
how you say your name?
Yeah, it's perfect. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Okay.
Hello,
All
Rosine.
right. Go ahead and speak your mind.
Thank you. Thank you, Cristino. Cos, can I say Cristino or Cristino Cos? Cristino Cos?
You can just say Chris.
Okay. Thank you, Chris.
Most people
Thank you.
do.
Thank you, Chris, for this presentation. It was really amazing. I'm a business analyst working at in the UK, Manchester, and
Mhm.
I find in my business analyst role, I found it really difficult for clarity. That's why I attend this webinar, and it's really helpful. My question concerns the third approach. Can we go back to the slide, please?
Of
So I
course,
can,
that's why I keep it open. Up, 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 up.
yeah, the third context, exactly,
Mhm.
exactly.
Mhm.
When everyone disagree. So according to this slide, the recommendation is to go with the workshops. When everyone disagree like this, workshops, we're supposed to have everyone in the same room at the same time, correct?
Correct. Correct.
So, what would you recommend? Because when we have everyone in the same room at the same time, it can be really long because people want to put their argument on the table every time. What would you recommend on this specific case? Would you recommend to listen everyone and when you do the facilitation, you give, you ask the first open question and everyone answer to this same question? What if the answer are different? How will you guide this kind of
Uh,
workshop? It
I
can be really
recommend.
messy at the end.
Indeed, indeed. That's why it's one of the toughest situations. What I recommend is to use visuals. So start mapping the process even before the workshop in your preparation. Start mapping the process in question and enter the workshop presenting what you have understood.
Okay,
And then go
okay.
step by step with each one. And if there is a conflict somewhere,
Mm-hmm,
uh, stick, stay in that step
mm-hmm,
and try to see not what is the conflict in their notion of what happens currently, but what
mm-hmm.
do they want to happen.
Okay,
So make a shift from mapping the conflicting process that exists
okay,
to mapping the target.
okay,
If they if both sides eventually want something different, maybe the process is not just one. Maybe you
okay,
have two processes in front of you that they try to combine for some reason. So
okay.
for the onboarding example I used, maybe each department needs a different onboarding process.
Mm-hmm.
This may be a case. You don't have to stick with what you supposed at the beginning. But
That
first,
means,
but
sorry.
first check if they can be merged, if they can agree on something.
Mm-hmm.
That's what
That
I would do.
that means you have to do like shadowing or observation before, or have a little interview with each of them before this workshop.
It depends on what you have available. Uh,
Because to have something map, if you map a process before, where do you get the information from?
Documentation, maybe.
If
I
they
mean,
don't have, because most of company don't have the documentation, you know that.
lovely, lovely. Uh, let's say the whole chain starts with some request. The
Okay.
request would be, if the request is verbal,
Mm-hmm.
you have to follow through with the one that made the request to get as many clarifications as you can
Okay.
before
Okay.
entering the workshop. In
Okay.
any case, when you organize a workshop,
Mm-hmm.
you always have to have something before
Yes.
so that you enter with some material. Otherwise,
Mm-hmm.
we are not ready for a workshop.
Okay. True.
You are still in one of the previous cases where you need to probe, you need to make some interviews, as you said. You may identify the key stakeholders of each department, have a short one-on-one with each one of them. It may be just two people.
Yeah. Interesting the fact you mentioned the stakeholder here, because where we have to pick wisely the people who attend the the workshop, because do we need to pick the user of the system? I mean, I guess it depends on the objective of the meeting, of the workshop. Okay. That's
Exactly.
fine. Okay, that's perfect.
Usually, the end user is not the one in the initial interviews and workshops, usually. Because
Come again, sorry, say that again.
I say that usually the end
Yeah.
user is not the one participating in the initial meetings. At least in my experience, and when you are working outside an organization, the need for change has started because the end user has requested something from a supervisor or from someone that has the authority. So that someone has initiated the change that has reached you. So that person would be the first contact point that has already managed the information from the end users.
Okay.
And that's quite good because you have a single point of contact to start with, and then you expand as needed.
So would you recommend to start with the end user or with the supervisor?
I would start with the super user and then drill down for clarifications on specific processes.
From my experience, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, sometimes the supervisor don't really know what happened in reality.
Exactly.
Because
That's why you have to drill down then.
Okay. Because I
But
used to work at in the customer service department, and there the supervisor most of the time don't know what happened in the flow. So they have the process in mind, what ideally they would like the process to be. And when you discuss with the actual, because for this specific project, I use the shadowing technique, sit with the customer service advisor and go through all the different steps. When I have to clarify, like you mentioned, the last step to validate these different steps, I do the validation with the one I shadow. And when we need to do the process as is, you realize that it could be different from the perspective of what is actually done and the perspective of the business as the manager.
I
I
perfectly
don't know
agree.
if you already come across this kind of conflict.
The thing is that when you first start, the supervisor can tell you who are the stakeholders,
Okay.
what are the friction points that he has observed,
Okay.
who are the key users of his department, let's say, that you could then contact. So you can better formulate your strategy. But if you start with the end user, you only see the problem from a narrow perspective.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
why the end user is the next step, so that you can drill down on the process.
Correct. Okay. Perfect. Thank you, Chris.
That was my notion.
Thank you very much.
Thank
To
you.
add to that, it also helps to understand where these stakeholders sit in the business architecture. All right, so that's an important lens to look through it, so that as Chris, I can call you Chris too now, right?
Of course.
As Chris correctly mentioned, there will naturally be friction. There will naturally be different perspectives. it's important to look at it through the lens of how does this work within the architecture of the business to be able to really understand where that perspective is coming from and how to move forward with it.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
A good question though. And that's really something that's very frequent, right? That we deal with all the time.
I like
Yeah.
practical questions.
Yeah, I like the part where you shift debate from people to the work.
Yes, yes, because nothing is personal in my view. I have argued with quite some people, colleagues, or clients, but at the end of the day, we're good friends. This doesn't change. So if we focus on the problem at hand, the problem that we have to solve, people just continue to live their lives happily.
Yeah, yeah, and I feel like having a model, as you said, I totally agree with this, that having a model or something to look at, it really shifts the debate away because
Yes,
now instead
yes,
of looking at each other, we're all on the same side looking at the thing.
exactly. Exactly. It's also psychological
Yeah.
because you move in a physical room, we would turn the chairs and look towards the same thing. It's very important.
Yeah.
It shows the togetherness.
Right, right. All of a sudden, we're on the same side
Yep.
instead of adversarial. That's really cool. And a really great takeaway from this. Any more questions? I have one.
Okay.
So there are many different elicitation techniques for different scenarios.
Mhm.
Would you say the same is true for different personalities?
Yes, actually, yes. Uh, Recent case, we had a new client. We didn't know how to handle, uh, so we opted to start with a workshop. So we had made all our document excavation and studied the history and everything, but we were not really sure what was the question at hand. So we decided to have a 4-hour workshop, full-blown workshop, discuss everything, and see where we go. And we went with that proposition to the client, and freaked out. She freaked out because the answer was, I don't have 4 hours for you at this stage. I will not start telling you what to do. You have to come up with proposals. And that was fair. That was very fair. So we just switched to preparing what we understood, presenting in short half-hour sessions, and either take criticism or validation before we move on. So shifting that allowed us to work not only faster, but also having her in a better mood to be more cooperative. And this happened because we didn't know the personality of that client yet. So approaching with different ways, of course, has to do with personality. Other times you may just need email communication because the other person doesn't want to have many meetings. It has happened. So you prepare carefully structured emails or questionnaires and just send those for asynchronous communication. It makes things a little bit harder, but it's always a combination of all. Uh, what's the word? of everything that affects the current process.
That's a very interesting example. Of course, not everyone will have all the time in the world to spend on this project. For many of these people, it's like a side thing for them from their actual job, right?
On the other side, I had also cases where we had live workshops, 6-hour workshops for 5 days straight, which was overkill. But because we had many different stakeholders, we have to group them in different sessions, so it carried quite a long time.
Rosine, yes.
Yes, I have another question, Chris, regarding the workshop. I think I read your article on the Medium on these workshop things. And what do you think if we ask, because taking notes, even if I know business analyst is not a note takers, but we still need to take notes or to, to understand how the workshop is going on. If we ask the permission to record and then focus 100% on the workshop, how long do you think a workshop should last to be really productive?
Heavily depends on the context and the number of participants. If you have a team of 4 in a moderately sized system, 2 hours could be more than enough. But it depends on the number of participants, the type of participants. If you also have, let's say, DevOps teams joining, this would add an additional focused hour on DevOps processes. If you have, it really depends. It really depends. It really depends. The key is to break down your session into sub-sessions that affect specific stakeholders, if you can.
Okay.
And this will give you a guide on the total time you need. And then you can see, is there any advantage in combining them? If there is, you go for a full blown out 4-hour session and have everyone in there.
Half a day. Yes.
Yeah, and have coffee with them and lunch and everything.
Yeah, exactly. Some biscuits.
But if it doesn't make sense to have all those people in the same room, technical people, business people, managerial people, and external stakeholders, whatever, you can break those into 1-hour sessions and have better results.
Yes.
But it heavily depends on the type of the system, how acquainted you already are with the specific client. It may be the case that when you start with a client, you have an initial workshop for something, for any request that lasts 2 or 3 hours, but subsequently, because you have started talking with them and learning how they think and everything, you just need 1-hour session with 2 or 3 key stakeholders for a specific change. So it's not a uniformly applied answer.
Thank you. I have another question. You didn't mention it during your presentation. What do you think on the questionnaire? Because questionnaire is another way of requirement gathering. What do you think?
I'm personally not a great fan of questionnaires, to say the truth. I see their value, but I have found them to be a risky way of collecting requirements, because the framing of the questions must be very, very, very explicit in order to avoid wasting other people's time. And in cross-cultural environments, like we usually work, this is very hard to achieve. So if me from Greece prepares a questionnaire that will be sent to France, England, UK, Germany, and Philippines, I expect that not all people will perceive it the same way. So I generally avoid questionnaires unless I deal with very specific people.
Okay.
I have only used them a couple of times in my days.
Okay. Perfect.
You'll
Thank
see
you.
one right after this webinar. Anyway, we have another question. I think Nick was raising his hand.
Yes, hello. When entering a room for having a workshop or one-on-one interview, key input for the business analyst, except from the spoken language or the emails, etc., is the body language. Now, living in the post-COVID era, that most of the meetings or workshops are happening through the web, how this thing affects and how you can overcome this situation.
The transition was very tough, let me say that, because I was used to face-to-face. I was used to traveling to where the customer was, and I was also used to the discussions in between the workshops and the meetings. So the transition was tough. What works is camera on, zoom out, try to be as expressive as you can yourself, hoping that you will also draw the other side to do the same. So you have to make the other side feel comfortable. If they don't, this is already a sign. If they insist on having the camera off, this is already a sign that they want to keep the distance. So it's not more only body language, it's also camera language.
Yeah. Some signs.
Yeah, it makes things tougher. I agree. About 80% of communication is non-verbal, as we know, but we overcome it by starting to examine different tells. For example, you cannot see my feet now, so you don't know if I have crossed legs or if I have anxiety tapping my feet or anything which would help in an elicitation discussion. But at least you see my hands, you see me moving, smiling mostly, unless I remember the third context with the arguments.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick.
Great question. Okay, so we are about 5 minutes over time. Thank you so much. Let me take the screen sharing back.
Yes, oh, I forgot that I was still sharing.
Yeah, thank you so much for extending with us and answering all those great questions, Chris. And thank you for such a great topic and for such a great webinar, for facilitating this and for discussing with us. This has been very engaging. It is a lot of insights, a lot of learning for us today. I know I myself have learned a lot in going through your Medium articles and listening to you talk here firsthand. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
From IIBA Philippines, we are honored to have you as our guest speaker. Thank you very much. Yeah, really great to meet you, Chris, and looking forward to seeing what's next in your journey. And from everyone, actually, from the business analysis community, we thank you for your great contribution to the body of knowledge and to making this community better as a whole.